Welcome to Silicon Valley Asian Business Talk.
Hello, everyone. This is Roger Chen from University of San Francisco Center for Business Studies and Innovation, Asia Pacific. Welcome to join our interview program. We want to thank you for the support.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Thank you for inviting me to this session. My background, I grew up in India and came here for my master's in the early 80s in computer science, and then moved to, and that was at Virginia Tech on the East Coast. I then got my first job at Intel. I went to a college in India called BITS Pilani, which is considered to be India's #1 private university for science and engineering. Intel was like the dream company. I was fortunate to get a job there. So about 10 years into Intel journey, you're surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley. And, I decided to, begin my own journey with a company called Sierra Atlantic. And, that grew to be a fairly substantial size company, about 2,500 employees worldwide over a 17-year period. And, through the course of that, we raised capital from some of the Sandhill Road companies, venture funds. So that's kind of my background as a tech entrepreneur. And I've also been spending considerable time in the nonprofit sector starting 2010-11. Both here in the US and also in India. And a good part of my time also goes into working with tech startups, mostly young first-time founders, helping them build their companies, mostly as an early investor, angel investor, but sometimes I get more actively involved with them, serving on their boards and all that.
Discussion topic: risks and solutions to maintain growth momentum.
Okay, so next question is about startup companies' approach to risks after they found product market fit. Obviously, most of startup company, when they start, they tend to do what we call the radical innovation, disrupting the existing business. But once they find their initial product, initial market, should these companies continue to pursue very different, very risky innovation products, which tend to be high risk, high return? Or should they focus on more incremental adjusting their existing products? Or under what situation you think a company should pursue, these different type of innovation strategies? So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. If you look at the tech industry more than any other, there are very few that have sustained kind of a leadership position beyond, 30 years or 40 years, right? And almost by definition, there are so many big disruptions that keep happening in the industry that come mostly from the startup world.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. While I'm a strong proponent of sort of staying focused on your markets, customers, and all of that, and your product, the reality is you have to look at the adjacent space. That's where I think, some of the companies have done a much better job of it than others with the M&A. You could argue a lot of Cisco's sort of continued leadership has actually come from the M&A that they've done. And Facebook, you could argue, got much more out of Instagram acquisition than, their core, this thing, if they stayed just on their core, this thing. And Oracle, certainly with the Siebel, PeopleSoft, and so many other acquisitions. And that is not always a strategy, right? I guess I have a little bit more of a bias towards, and then Hitachi. After Hitachi bought my company, I served on different Hitachi company boards and drove acquisitions for some of their companies in the payment space. So I've seen that, now Hitachi is a very different culture, very different sort of a mindset, large Japanese company. I have more of a bias towards acquiring smaller companies and giving them the freedom and sort of creating more of the entrepreneurs within your large company as you start scaling.
Okay.
Yeah, that's but and as opposed to trying to rely on your internal teams to continue finding new markets, new things. But I mean, yeah, that is just my sort of.
Actually, I think, what you talk about, because you give us a lot of example, these are really very powerful example to demonstrate your point, meaning as these new companies grow or expand, the reality is they have to face some uncertainties. And you mentioned many of these companies using acquisition to manage those kind of uncertainties or risks, right?
Yeah. And then again, Roger, since we talk so much about culture, people, some of these companies have clearly done a remarkable job of integrating these acquisitions. It's almost become like a, sort of a well-run, well-oiled machine. Like Cisco, I would say, is one of those. And there again, I think it comes down to, the leadership. I think John Chambers, to his credit, was a fantastic leader. Because, especially in the first 6 months after an acquisition. Now, a little bit of my personal experience having gone through 4 acquisitions, but that's pretty small. I mean, number of acquisitions we have done compared to large companies. It's all about the hearts and minds of the people, in the first 6 months of the company that you buy. So one of the practices I used to have, was after we bought the company, when I do my all hands meeting, I would always go to the site of the new company because most of them were like small tuck-in acquisitions. They were typically in the 10 to, at most 20% of my company revenue at the time we bought them, right? So they were a much smaller company in terms of employee base and all of that. So I would go to one of the companies we bought was in London. So I went to London and ran my all hands meeting from there. So the rest of my organization knows how important that is. And, it's not just up to me, but, and likewise, one company was out of Charlotte, so I did the same thing. And one was in China and Boston, so I ran that out of China. So again, I'm just thinking about it as I reflect on your question. So it's not just doing M&A as a strategy, but also how you do it and doing it.
Yeah. That's a great point. So there's actually, from the business perspective, the reality is you have to feel comfortable dealing with the risks causing by the change or the growth pain. But as you mentioned, the key is how do you manage those things, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.